Can a man ever truly escape his past? Or is he destined to be haunted by the ghosts he thought he buried long ago? Deep in the heartland, nestled between rolling hills and whispering fields of corn, lies the town of Havenwood. It's the kind of place where everyone knows your name, where the biggest news is the annual county fair, and where peace is a way of life. For Jack Riley, it was a sanctuary. To the townsfolk, he was just Jack, the quiet, unassuming mechanic with grease-stained hands. And a sad smile. The man who could fix any engine but rarely spoke of his own past. They didn't know that those same hands were once trained for a different, deadlier purpose. They didn't know that Jack Riley was a name he chose to forget the man he used to be. Captain John Spector, Riley, a decorated Special Forces operator, a ghost who moved through the shadows of the world's most dangerous war zones. His past was a montage of sand-swept battlefields in Afghanistan, dense jungles in South America, and covert operations shrouded in government secrecy. He had seen the very worst of humanity. The final mission was the one that broke him. A classified operation deep in enemy territory, an ambush, an explosion that ripped through the night. He had dragged himself from the wreckage, the lone survivor, carrying the weight of his entire team, including his closest friend and right-hand man, Sergeant Marcus "Ghost" Thorne. The official report listed Thorne and the others as killed in action. Riley carried that guilt like a rucksack filled with stones, the memory of Marcus's face in the flash of the explosion forever seared into his mind. He accepted a quiet discharge, trading his rifle for a wrench, seeking solace in the hum of a well-tuned engine and the simple tranquility of Havenwood. He believed he had finally found peace. But peace, he was about to learn, is a fragile thing. The trouble rolled in on a wave of chrome and leather, heralded by the thunderous roar of a dozen motorcycle engines. They called themselves the Asphalt Vipers, a ruthless biker gang that radiated menace. Their leader was a mountain of a man, clad in black leather, his face obscured by a skull-painted helmet and dark sunglasses. They weren't just passing through. They started small, a shakedown at the local diner, a brutal beating of a farmer who refused to pay their protection fee. Fear began to curdle the sweet air of Havenwood. The local sheriff, a good man but hopelessly outmatched, tried to intervene, only to end up with a broken arm and a torched patrol car for his trouble. The Vipers were staking their claim, turning the once peaceful town into their personal fiefdom. They smashed storefronts, dealt drugs openly in the town square, and their laughter echoed through streets where children once played. Jack watched from the shadows of his garage, his hands tightening around a wrench until his knuckles turned white. He saw the fear in his neighbor's eyes, the same helpless terror he'd seen in the eyes of civilians in war-torn countries. Every instinct screamed at him to stay hidden, to protect the fragile peace he had built for himself. He was no longer Captain Riley. He was just Jack, the mechanic. But one evening, as he was closing up shop, he saw them corner Sarah, the young woman who ran the town's small bookstore, her face pale with terror as the Viper's leader loomed over her. Something inside Jack snapped. The quiet mechanic receded, and the soldier, the protector, began to stir from his long slumber. He knew he couldn't stand by and watch his sanctuary be destroyed. The ghosts of his past whispered to him, not of failure, but of duty. That night, the shadows of Havenwood became Jack's allies once more. He moved with a silence and efficiency that was alien to the quiet town. The first target was a warehouse on the edge of town where the Vipers stored their illicit goods. He disabled the two guards outside with swift, non-lethal precision, their takedown so quick they barely made a sound. He was a phantom, melting into the darkness, using his knowledge of stealth and sabotage. Inside, he didn't set a fire or plant a bomb. That would be too loud, too chaotic. Instead, he systematically dismantled their operation from the inside out, contaminating their drug supply, draining the fuel from their bikes, and erasing the data from their laptops. He left a single, deliberate calling card, a small, hand-carved wooden specter, the symbol of his old unit, placed in the center of the room. It was a message, a warning. The next morning, the Vipers' camp was in chaos. Their leader, enraged, tore through the warehouse, his roars of fury echoing across the town. He saw the wooden specter and froze. For the rest of the gang, it was a meaningless trinket. For him, it was a ghost story made real. Jack, meanwhile, continued his silent war. He used the town's geography to his advantage, setting up small, disruptive ambushes. A tripwire that sent a string of their bikes toppling like dominoes. A strategically cut power line that plunged their new headquarters into darkness, followed by the disorienting blast of a flashbang he'd constructed from spare parts in his garage. He never showed his face, never engaged them directly. He was a ghost, an unseen force sowing confusion and paranoia in their ranks. The Vipers, used to ruling through brute force and fear, were now the ones who were afraid. They started arguing amongst themselves, jumping at shadows, their ironclad unity beginning to rust. The gang leader grew more and more obsessed, his rage focused entirely on this phantom enemy. He knew this wasn't the work of some local cop or brave townsperson. The precision, the tactics, the psychological warfare, it was all too familiar. He ordered his men to round up several townspeople, including the sheriff and Sarah, herding them into the town square. It was a trap, and Jack knew it. The leader stepped forward, his voice booming through a megaphone. "Show yourself, ghost, or these people will pay the price for your games." He stood there, waiting, a silhouette against the setting sun. Jack watched from the rooftop of the clock tower, a hunting rifle, long hidden beneath the floorboards of his home, resting in his hands. He adjusted the scope, zooming in on the leader's face as the man, in a moment of frustrated rage, pulled off his helmet and sunglasses to scan the rooftops. Time seemed to stop. The world narrowed to the circle of Jack's scope. The face that stared back at him was scarred and weathered, hardened by years of cruelty, but it was unmistakably, impossibly, the face of Sergeant Marcus Ghost Thorne, the man he thought had died in his arms, the man he had mourned for years. A torrent of memories flooded Jack's mind. The shared rations, the laughter in the barracks, the promise they made to have each other's backs, no matter what. And then the final mission, the explosion, the fire, but the face in his scope was not a memory. It was real. A cold dread, colder than any fear he had ever known on the battlefield, washed over him. The man leading this campaign of terror, the man threatening to burn down his new life, was not a stranger. It was his brother in arms, his friend, a ghost from a grave Jack thought he had personally dug. The man he had to stop was the one he failed to save. The rifle suddenly felt impossibly heavy in his hands. His greatest enemy wasn't a biker. It was a ghost from his past, wearing the face of his closest friend. And the quiet town of Havenwood was about to become the battlefield for their final, personal war. Will Ryle the mechanic win his former colleague and bring back peace to the community? Or will Havenwood be doomed with the woes from the bikers? Find out in the next episode of the story. Like, share, and subscribe for more heart-pounding action.